In a world where verbal battles have become commonplace and triumph in discussion is seen as the pinnacle of reason, a legitimate question arises. Is argument a true manifestation of strength, or does it conceal something deeper, perhaps even weakness? Today, we turn to the insightful ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most daring and controversial thinkers, to reveal why, in his view, argument often serves as a refuge for those who lack self-confidence. By the end of this fascinating exploration, you will not only rethink your approach to conflict situations, but also gain the ability to see human relationships in a completely different light. Nietzsche's philosophy challenges established social norms, and his view on arguments is no exception. He argued that true strength lies not in the ability to win a conversation or a debate, but in the courage to steadfastly adhere to one's beliefs, even in silence. According to Nietzsche, those who constantly engage in arguments are often trying to compensate for a lack of something important. They lack an internal sense of clarity or self-assurance. To understand this idea more deeply, it is necessary to first consider his broader view of human nature and the dynamics of power. Let's ask ourselves, what drives us when we enter into an argument? The desire to defend our own righteousness, the thirst for power over minds, or perhaps a deep-seated need to protect our identity? Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, convincingly argued that at the heart of most discussions lies a vulnerable ego, desperately needing confirmation of its significance through the subjugation or recognition of others. In his opinion, this is a clear sign of weakness. Truly strong individuals, on the other hand, have no need for external approval. They are in harmony with their beliefs, remaining unperturbed in the face of others' disagreement. In his outstanding work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche presents the concept of the Übermensch, Overman, an individual who rises above accepted norms and lives according to his own principles. The Overman does not waste time on meaningless arguments. Why? Because his energy is directed towards self-improvement, not proving his worth to others. Nietzsche believed that those who are constantly involved in arguments are mired in so-called ressentiment, a state in which a person defines himself through opposition to others rather than through the prism of his own values. This reactive way of life is, in essence, a manifestation of weakness, since it relinquishes control over one's emotions and self-identification to external factors. Recalling recent disagreements, it is worth asking, was the subject of the argument the real cause of the conflict, or were there deeper emotional motives hidden behind it? Perhaps it was a desire to prove one's intellectual competence, righteousness, or significance. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that true strength lies in the ability to recognize these impulses and control them. Instead of succumbing to reactive behavior, a strong person chooses deliberation and analysis. Instead of meaningless arguments, he rises above the situation, maintaining clarity of thought. It is important to note that Nietzsche did not preach passivity or silent acceptance of injustice. On the contrary, he placed actions above words, believing that true strength is manifested in embodying one's values through life and actions, not in empty rhetoric. A person who possesses inner strength has no need to convince others of his righteousness. He simply lives in accordance with his beliefs. He realizes that arguments rarely lead to a change in someone's point of view, but only strengthen existing positions. As Nietzsche wrote, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. This thought is especially relevant in the modern world, where social networks like a magnifying glass amplify any disagreement, turning minor disputes into large-scale conflicts. Nietzsche's philosophy encourages us to think about the purpose we pursue in an argument. Is it worth spending energy on this conflict, or are we simply reacting to the expectations of others? Nietzsche suggests stepping back and focusing on developing one's inner strength, instead of wasting it on destroying others. This is a choice in favor of self-control and wisdom, allowing one to conserve energy for truly important goals. What is meant by developing inner strength? For Nietzsche, this process begins with deep self-knowledge. He argued that the vast majority of people do not have a complete understanding of their true motives, hidden fears, and innermost desires. In the absence of such awareness, individuals become vulnerable puppets in the hands of external circumstances, susceptible to easy provocation and manipulation. Inner strength, on the other hand, grows from a deep understanding of one's own essence. It's the ability to maintain composure and resilience, regardless of the chaos raging around. Nietzsche's critical views also touch upon the very concept of truth. The philosopher believed that absolute truth is nothing more than an illusion, a concept artificially created by humanity to give meaning to the surrounding world. If truth is inherently subjective, what's the point of wasting effort arguing about it? According to Nietzsche, it's much more significant to strive for personal truth, to find one's own unique understanding. He urged people to explore their own values, beliefs, and life goals, instead of blindly submitting to social norms or seeking confirmation of their righteousness in endless disputes. This idea is both liberating and challenging. It requires us to abandon the obsessive need to always be right, to accept the inevitable uncertainty, and to focus on the process of self-discovery. Nietzsche's philosophy prompts us to ask ourselves, who am I outside of my arguments? What do I truly stand for, and am I living in accordance with my true beliefs, or am I simply reacting passively to the expectations of others? In conclusion of this reasoning, it's worth considering the following. The next time the impulse to engage in polemics arises, it's necessary to stop and carefully weigh the situation. Ask yourself, is this just an attempt to strengthen your ego, or is it an opportunity for personal growth and development? Friedrich Nietzsche's wise guidance calls us to see disputes not as battles to be won, but rather as mirrors reflecting our inner state. The question is, what exactly will we see when we look into this mirror? Developing this thought, it's necessary to turn to Nietzsche's deep understanding of the dynamics of power and its influence on human behavior. At the heart of his philosophical views lies the concept of the will to power. Nietzsche viewed this as the fundamental driving force of all human actions, not just a simple desire for survival, but including the desire for prosperity, growth, and self-affirmation in the surrounding world. However, in his opinion, true power stems not from control over others, but from mastering oneself. This distinction is crucial when considering the reasons why people engage in disputes. Often, disputes arise from a mistaken attempt to establish dominance or impose one's point of view. However, Nietzsche found deeply disturbing in such behavior that it often hides an inner emptiness, a lack of self-confidence, clarity, or purpose. People engage in disputes not because they are strong, but rather because they feel threatened, inferior, or insecure. As an illustration of this idea, Nietzsche often criticized what he called the herd instinct. By herd, he meant people who blindly follow social norms and seek confirmation of their righteousness through collective agreement. They engage in disputes to strengthen their position in the group, to prove their loyalty to generally accepted beliefs, or to silence dissenting voices that challenge their comfort zone. For Nietzsche, this was a sign of weakness. A truly strong personality, an Overman, doesn't need the approval of the herd. He lives guided by his own values, even if those values contradict generally accepted norms. Everyday life provides us with many examples that confirm this concept. It's enough to look at the heated online discussions, where constructive debate often gives way to insults and endless bickering. Such battles on the web rarely lead to any valuable understanding or conflict resolution, but rather demonstrate the deeply rooted insecurity of the participants, their desire for unconditional correctness, the desire to rise above others, or to avoid vulnerability. In light of Nietzsche's philosophy, such moments should be seen as what they really are: distractions that lead away from the true work on oneself and self-improvement. How do you break out of this vicious cycle? Nietzsche argued that the starting point is a radical shift of focus from the search for external approval to internal development. Instead of wasting energy trying to convince others, it should be directed towards creating a more authentic and stronger version of oneself. This requires considerable courage. The courage to face one's fears, admit one's shortcomings, and accept the inevitable discomfort that accompanies change. No less important is humility, the willingness to admit that you don't have a monopoly on truth and that your point of view is just one of many possible. It's important to understand that Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical views didn't call for hermetism or escape from the world at all. On the contrary, he emphasized that deep, meaningful relationships and an active exchange of ideas are necessary for the formation of personality. However, according to the thinker, such interaction should be built on a foundation of mutual respect and a shared thirst for knowledge of higher truths, rather than a desire for dominance or belittling the interlocutor. When people enter into dialogue with genuine curiosity, rather than from a defensive position, an atmosphere for genuine connection and mutual understanding is created. In this regard, a natural question arises. If a dispute is often a manifestation of weakness, then what is the true strength in disagreements? For Nietzsche, the point is not to win an argument per se, but to be able to rise above it. Strong personalities know how to listen with an open mind, interacting with ideas rather than with their own ego. They remain true to their principles, even when faced with a challenge. Such people do not avoid difficult discussions, but they also do not feel the need to assert themselves through confrontation. As an illustration, consider the following example. Imagine a situation where someone questions your beliefs or criticizes your actions. The natural reaction may be to defend yourself or defend your point of view. But what if instead you pause and reflect? What if you use this moment to analyze your own assumptions? Ask yourself if there is any truth in the criticism, or simply ignore the comment without feeling the need to react. This is not a manifestation of passivity, but a demonstration of strength and self-control. This approach shows that a person is not easily unbalanced by external factors, and that their self-esteem does not depend on the opinions of others. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical views have a significant impact on our understanding and ways of resolving conflict situations. Instead of perceiving disagreements as clashes in which it is necessary to prevail, they should be seen as a stimulus for personal growth and the development of relationships. Such a change in worldview can transform not only interpersonal relationships, but also socio-cultural processes as a whole. By prioritizing mutual understanding rather than satisfying personal ego, we create a favorable ground for constructive dialogue, avoiding destructive consequences. In the future, it is worth thinking about how these ideas relate to each person's personal experience. Have you ever been drawn into an argument where it was more important to prove your point than to find the truth? What aspects of your own insecurity or desires did this experience reveal? And how could your life have changed if you had been guided by Nietzsche's philosophy in such situations? The appeal of Nietzsche's teachings lies in its enduring relevance. Even in today's world characterized by rapid change and hyperconnectivity, his call for self-improvement and authenticity remains as powerful as ever. He calls for detaching from the hustle and bustle, analyzing one's own motives, and accepting the challenge of living in accordance with deep-seated values. However, this is only a superficial consideration of the issue. Nietzsche's philosophy offers a deeper understanding of the essence of human interaction, the dynamics of power, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. Continuing our study, we will consider how his ideas can help not only in resolving conflicts, but also in overcoming them, which will lead to a sense of purpose and self-realization. For a deep penetration into the Nietzschean vision of the futility of disputes, it is necessary to carefully study his concept of self-overcoming, which is one of the pillars of his philosophical system and the leitmotif of his work. Nietzsche viewed life not as something frozen, but as a continuous process of development, overcoming challenges and transformation. In his opinion, strength is born from the ability to overcome not only external obstacles, but also internal shackles, fears, doubts, and the obsessive need of the ego for confirmation. By entering into disputes, especially those fueled by egoistic motives, people often lose sight of this higher goal. The energy spent on proving one's point could be more productively directed towards self-improvement, understanding others, or deepening one's own views. Nietzsche's philosophical works serve as a reminder that the most important battles take place not on the verbal battlefield, but in the depths of the human soul. One of Nietzsche's most provocative ideas is his criticism of morality as a tool used by the weak. He argued that traditional moral systems often arise from resentment, a deep-seated resentment of the strong by those who feel powerless. This resentment leads to the formation of moral principles that prioritize meekness, submission, and conformism rather than strength, ambition, and individuality. In this context, disputes can be seen as a continuation of this dynamic, as an attempt by the weak to impose their values on others, rather than overcoming their own limitations and striving for self-improvement. In light of the above, a pressing question naturally arises. How is it possible to build relationships with others while avoiding the dangerous quagmire of fruitless discussions? Friedrich Nietzsche, a prominent thinker, would suggest seeking a solution in the high art of dialogue. Unlike arguments, those confrontational battles where the sole goal is to prevail over the opponent, dialogues represent a collaborative search for truth, aimed at achieving mutual understanding. In a dialogue, both sides approach the conversation with an open heart, full of humility and a sincere willingness to learn. They do not seek to assert their superiority, but rather jointly explore various ideas and concepts. As an example, consider the disagreements that arise between two close friends over a deeply ingrained belief. In the heat of an argument, each will stand their ground, refusing to yield and only increasing the tension in the relationship. However, in a constructive dialogue, they can ask each other questions, share personal experiences, and seek common ground. The result of this approach is not only a deeper understanding of each other's positions, but also personal growth for both participants. Nietzsche's dislike of arguments is by no means a call to avoid all conflict. Conflict, if approached with intelligence and a constructive attitude, can be a powerful catalyst for progress and development. The philosopher urges us to rise above petty squabbles and focus on what truly matters: the relentless pursuit of excellence, authenticity, and a life lived in accordance with one's own beliefs and values. This requires a radical shift in thinking, from perceiving others as adversaries to recognizing them as fellow travelers on a shared life journey. To bring this idea to life, it is worth turning to the concept of eternal recurrence, proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche. The philosopher suggests imagining that each of us is doomed to live our lives countless times, where every moment, every experience will be repeated again and again in an endless time loop. This profound thought experiment necessitates an honest assessment of the choices made and the values adopted. Ask yourself the question: are you willing to spend eternity mired in petty squabbles and meaningless disputes, or would you rather direct your energy towards more meaningful and inspiring goals? This perspective has tremendous transformative potential. It serves as a reminder that time is a precious gift, and every minute spent on pointless arguments is an irretrievably lost opportunity for self-development and achieving something greater. Instead of wasting energy on fruitless debates, it is much wiser to direct energy towards creation, learning, and establishing deep connections with others. Nietzsche's philosophy also calls for a rethinking of the attitude towards truth. His famous saying, "There are no facts, only interpretations," does not deny the existence of truth, but emphasizes that it is always shaped by subjective perception. In the heat of an argument, we often mistakenly believe that our point of view is the only correct one, dismissing all others as patently false. However, Nietzsche urges us to embrace the multifaceted nature of truth and recognize the existence of many equal points of view. Such a shift in perception can radically change the approach to disagreements. Instead of seeing them as a threat to one's own worldview, one can see them as a valuable opportunity to broaden one's horizons. Listen to the opponent without prejudice, ask questions with genuine interest, and learn something new without fear. However, Nietzsche's philosophical views extend far beyond simply avoiding confrontation. His teachings call for a radical transformation of the individual, for constant self-improvement. The essence of this concept lies in the relentless pursuit of surpassing one's own limitations. It is a process of liberation from the shackles of fear, doubt, and egocentrism that prevent one from realizing one's potential and finding the courage to live in accordance with one's true beliefs. In conclusion to this section, it is worth considering the significance of silence in situations fraught with conflict. Nietzsche argued that silence can be a manifestation of strength, a conscious refusal to participate in meaningless debates. This is not a passive silence of submission, but a silence dictated by self-confidence, the silence of a person who knows their worth and does not need constant confirmation. The next time the desire arises to enter into an argument, it is worth stopping and asking yourself, what am I trying to achieve? Is this situation an opportunity for personal growth, or am I simply giving in to the impulses of my ego? Nietzsche's philosophy calls for choosing the path of strength, wisdom, and self-overcoming, even if it seems more difficult. In the concluding section, we will explore how Nietzsche's philosophy offers not only a critique of conflict, but also a kind of guide to a more meaningful and fulfilling life. The discoveries to be made have the potential to change not only the nature of interactions with others, but also the perception of oneself in this world. Reflecting on the culmination of the Nietzschean perspective on conflict situations, we come to one of his most profound insights. Power lies not in subjugating others, but in self-mastery. This art of self-possession goes beyond trivial avoidance of disputes. It implies a way of life that is a reflection of inner harmony, purposefulness, and unwavering spirit. Nietzsche argued that true strength manifests itself in silence, resilience, and the ability of a person to rise above worldly vanities. To fully grasp this, it is necessary to turn to the Nietzschean concept of the Übermensch. The Übermensch is the epitome of human potential, an individual who has overcome societal prejudices, personal limitations, and embraced life in all its diversity. According to Nietzsche, the Übermensch does not engage in pointless arguments because he does not feel the need to. His existence itself is a convincing argument. His actions, principles, and achievements speak louder than any words. In the modern world, this idea may seem paradoxical. We live in an age of continuous communication, where opinions are exchanged, discussed, and analyzed with incredible speed. Social networks, news platforms, and public discussions often favor quantity over quality, creating the illusion that the loudness of a voice is a sign of strength. However, Nietzsche's philosophy calls us to step back from this chaos and focus on what is truly meaningful, the personal path of self-improvement and knowledge. How can we integrate Friedrich Nietzsche's profound ideas into the fabric of our daily lives, transforming the mundane into a space for personal growth and self-improvement? First and foremost, it is necessary to realize that not every clash of opinions deserves our involvement. Faced with a potential conflict, it is worth asking oneself, Is this discussion really worth the energy expended? To what extent does participation in these debates resonate with my deepest values and life goals? Or is it just a distracting maneuver leading away from the main thing? Nietzsche argued that the ability to choose when and how to engage in a dispute is a true sign of strength of spirit. This shows that we are not puppets of our own impulses, but on the contrary, are masters of our actions, consciously directing our energy. Secondly, we should strive to approach disagreements from a position of sincere curiosity rather than defensive readiness. Instead of defending one's point of view at all costs, it is necessary to try to understand the logic and arguments of the opponent. This does not mean abandoning one's own beliefs, but rather implies openness to the possibility of enriching one's view of the world, learning something new, or seeing the situation from a different angle. Nietzsche highly valued intellectual courage, that is, the willingness to question one's own established ideas and accept the multifaceted nature of truth. Thirdly, it is important to focus on embodying one's values in life, rather than on fruitless arguments about them. This means living in accordance with one's principles, demonstrating them through one's actions, even when faced with opposition. Nietzsche was convinced that authenticity has much greater power than any, even the most convincing rhetoric. When we live authentically, we inspire others not with words, but with personal example, infecting them with our conviction and purposefulness. Let us turn to a broader view of life, as preached by Friedrich Nietzsche. At the very heart of his philosophical views lies a call to accept all the challenges and unpredictability of existence with courage and a creative approach. He sincerely believed that life is not a puzzle that needs to be solved, but rather a blank canvas on which everyone is free to create their own meaning. In this context, controversy and strife appear only as annoying distractions, diverting from the true work of life, the painstaking process of becoming who we are truly meant to be. One of Nietzsche's most iconic ideas is the concept of amor fati, which translates from Latin as love of fate. This profound idea is that we should open-heartedly accept everything that happens in our lives, be it moments of joy and exultation, or periods of sorrow and sadness, triumphs and achievements, or failures and defeats. All these are integral elements of our life's journey. By adopting this mindset, we can approach any conflicts with a sense of imperturbable calm and balance. Instead of perceiving disagreements as insurmountable obstacles, we can view them as valuable opportunities for personal growth, acquiring new knowledge and strengthening our character. This, in turn, leads us to perhaps the most powerful and inspiring lesson of all, the realization that true strength lies not in running away from conflicts and disagreements, but in the ability to transform them. When we approach disputes and disagreements with wisdom, humility, and an unwavering commitment to personal growth, we can turn even the most complex and tense interactions into moments of genuine transformation. We can rise above the petty need to win at all costs, and instead focus our attention on what really matters, building strong relationships, fostering mutual understanding, and living life in accordance with our true values and beliefs. Concluding this deep dive into the world of Nietzschean philosophy, it is worth pausing and reflecting on the key aspects of his teachings. According to Nietzsche, the relentless pursuit of arguments and debates is more a symptom of inner weakness than a manifestation of strength. The issue isn't that discussions themselves are inherently harmful. The problem is that they distract our attention and energy from a far more important task: continuous self-improvement and overcoming our own limitations. True power, according to Nietzsche, lies not in striving for dominance over others, but in the ability to control one's own passions and instincts, in the ability to master oneself. This strength manifests in the courage to live in accordance with one's beliefs, in the humility that allows us to question even the most seemingly unshakable truths, and in the wisdom that helps us focus on what really matters, without getting bogged down in trivialities. Therefore, the next time the temptation to engage in polemics arises, it is worth pausing and asking yourself a few questions. What am I trying to achieve with this argument? What are my own complexes and desires that are coming to the fore at this moment? And how can I use this situation for personal growth, for gaining new knowledge, and for becoming a stronger and more confident individual? Nietzsche's philosophy is not about escaping conflicts, but, on the contrary, about consciously overcoming them. It is a call to rise above worldly vanities, to accept the challenges of fate with courage and creativity, to live a full life that fully reflects our potential. It is an invitation to become the architects of our own destiny, the creators of our own meaning in life, and the masters of our own existence. And perhaps this is the most important lesson that nature itself teaches us. The most convincing argument we can present to the world is not speeches and debates, but the very life we consciously choose to dedicate ourselves to. Our life path, full of actions and accomplishments, speaks louder than any words, becoming a true reflection of our values and beliefs.